Before I get started here, let me tell you I am not an attorney. I'm not here to give you legal advice. I'm here to tell you about the choices that you can make as you do your advance directive. An advance directive is all about choices. And so as I go through the options here, you are the one that's going to make those choices so that it is your document. And you can tailor this document if you'd like. If there's a word or two or a phrase or even a sentence that you don't agree with, if that doesn't sit right with you, you're very welcome to draw a line through it, meaning that you don't want that as part of your advance directive. And if there's something, a word or a phrase or even a sentence that you would like to add, if there's room for it, you can do that too. So you can tailor this advance directive to be exactly as you want it. Now, the advance directive that we're going to be working with today is the Compassion and Choices of Washington's advance directive. They spent a lot of time developing this with advice from medical doctors and legal experts. And it is designed to reflect the state of medical care in the United States right now, which Karen said is everything we can do to keep you going. Now, if that's not what you want, you can opt out of some of those things in your advance directive. But again, if that's what you want heroic measures, you want every minute you can get out of this life, then this advance directive is probably not for you. So what we're going to do today in this session, we're going to talk about the advance directive. Now, the advance directive is a document that you will need when you're faced with prolonging an existence rather than your life. That's a very sobering thought. When you can no longer choose life, your advance directive is going to help you choose a humane death. And that's kind of comforting. We're also going to talk about a healthcare agent, just what is a healthcare agent, how you choose a healthcare agent, and what a healthcare agent is going to do. Basically, the healthcare agent is the person who speaks for you using your advance directive choices when you cannot speak for yourself. You may be in a coma. You may have suffered a massive stroke, you're still alive, but you cannot communicate. You may have some form of dementia or Alzheimer's. You're still alive, but you cannot communicate. And you're faced with some kind of a medical situation. You need somebody to interface with the care providers, and this is what the advance directive is going to do for you. Now, we're going to walk through each one of the sections of the advance directive. It's about a 4 or 5 page document. We're going through each section in just a moment, and if you have questions about it, we can address them then. And once you get your advance directive done, it's very important to know what you're going to do with it. Now, Karen said don't put it in your safe deposit box. But I'll talk about some other things that you need to consider once your advance directive is completed.
Excuse me?
Yes?
What does it say at the top? I have 2 sets of instructions for the advance directive, but nothing that says advance directive.
Okay, you must have a faulty packet. We'll take care of that.
It's called Durable Power of Attorney for Healthcare and Healthcare Directive.
Keep going. In your packet, you don't have an advance directive.
It doesn't say advance directive. That's the durable power of attorney for healthcare.
It is durable power of attorney for healthcare. Okay, you're okay. Let me just look at that. Oh yeah, that's it. Durable power of attorney for healthcare and healthcare directive of. You're fine. Okay, sorry. Thank you for calling that to my attention. Ooh, okay. Ooh, we can't have all of these packets bad. Okay. Okay, so an advance directive, it's a legal document that states your wishes for future medical care if you cannot speak for yourself. And Karen mentioned it's sometimes called a living will, a healthcare directive, a physician's directive. There's another thing out there that you may have heard of called the 5 wishes. That's another type of advance directive. So we're going to be dealing with the Compassion and Choices of Washington's advance directive today. The next document that goes hand in hand with an advance directive is called a durable power of attorney for health care. And this is where you name the person who is going to be your spokesperson when you need to have somebody speak for you. Now, if you think about these two documents, but fortunately, we have a document that has both things in one document. That means you only have to keep track of one document. Now, if you think about the Advance Directive as a roadmap for your journey of life, and your durable power of attorney for healthcare, or your healthcare agent, which we'll be referring to him as that, as the driver, think about setting off of a journey and not having a roadmap and not having a driver. You may end up someplace where you don't want to be. Same thing about end of life. Your Advance Directive is going to tell people what you want and where you want to go and what you don't want. Your healthcare agent is going to interpret those wishes for the medical providers. If you don't have those documents, you may end up somewhere you don't want to be. And where might that be? In a hospital bed connected to a lot of tubes. And I think most of us don't think that's a very good way to end our life. Now, unlike a lot of legal documents, this Advance Directive, Durable Power of Attorney for Healthcare, a copy is just as legal as the original. It does not need an attorney to execute it. All you have to do is sign it in the presence of two witnesses, and you can have it notarized or not, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Now, how do I create an Advance Directive? Well, first of all, you have to decide what you want and don't want, and we're going to go through that. And then you need to communicate your wishes, and Karen talked about making sure your family and your healthcare providers know what you want. And then the important thing here is, even if you communicate your wishes, you've got to also make sure you get commitment from those people that they agree with what they're going to, what you want, and they're not going to give you a lot of grief about it. Some family members may not agree with some of your provisions, but these provisions are what you choose, and in the end, that's what will be done. Now, you have a document in your packet. I don't expect you to pull it out now because we've got a lot of other things to go through, but I just want to call your attention to it. It's called an Advance Directive Comparison. It's a 3-column document that's about the size of a legal size page. And it's comparing 3 standard types of advance directives, the pros and cons, what's good, what's not so good. And one of them is the National Death Act Healthcare Directive. That's on the left-hand side, and in the middle, we're comparing the 5 wishes. Some of you may have heard of that before. And then on the right-hand side, we're comparing the features of the Advance Directive done by Compassion and Choices of Washington. Now, our Advance Directive, we feel, is the most comprehensive. It deals with both terminal and non-terminal conditions. There are several dementia provisions in our Advance Directive, which you don't see in other Advance Directives, which is really kind of nice because, you know, dementia and Alzheimer's is a disease of older people, and guess what's going to happen to us? We're all going to get older. And if you have that in your family, there's a better chance that you might get it. So having provisions that deal with dementia or Alzheimer's are kind of comforting. In fact, very comforting. And our Advance Directive has no stealth statements, no contradictions. One of the Advance Directives says all bets are off if you're pregnant. Now, I don't see too many of us getting pregnant around here. But we do want you to share this experience with your children, your grandchildren, your friends who may get pregnant, and they have to think about what they would want if they were pregnant. Also, some of the Advance Directives have statements that conform to Catholic procedures or ethics. You know, the Catholic Church has a lengthy document, which is interesting to read, called the Ethics and Religious Directives, and that's what these new hospitals that are being purchased by the Catholic Church or affiliated with the Catholic Church have to follow. They have a section on beginning of life and end of life, and there is a statement in there that the Catholic Church feels your body or your life is not your own. And they also have a statement that says doctors should do nothing nothing should be done or omitted with the intention of taking a life. And if you're being kept alive by a respirator and artificial feeding, it may be a difficult situation there. Now, before we get started on the advanced directive, I'd like to switch gears here for a minute and talk about another end-of-life form that everybody should know about, and at some point probably may have. Probably not today, but later on. And this is called the POLST. How many of you know what a POLST is, by show of hands? Great, what a well-educated group. How many of you have one? On your refrigerator? Yeah. Okay, what is a POLST for people who don't know what it is? A POLST, is a non-hospital medical order that must be signed by your physician or physician's assistant and dated, and signed by you or your healthcare agent and dated. A person will have a POLST when they are either diagnosed with a terminal disease, or they have a chronic disease which may eventually lead to death, or they could be rather elderly and frail, and they've made the decision that if death should come, they're ready to accept it. So that's generally when you have a POLST, and it's designed for emergency situations like calling the EMTs when you're at home, you collapse. What do? You call the EMTs. Now, as I said, it's designed for emergency treatment. If you collapse, the first thing the emergency personnel are going to do is check for a pulse and a heartbeat. If you don't have a pulse or a heartbeat, the next thing they're going to do is check for your POLST form. Do you have a POLST form on your refrigerator? Look at this bright green form. It's bright green because it needs to be visible. And so when you have a POLST form done, they want you to post it on your refrigerator, so if EMTs are called, they will look there and see what it is you want or don't want. That is the only thing that they're going to honor when it comes to whether you want CPR or no CPR. Now, you may be wearing a bracelet, a life alert bracelet or a medical alert bracelet with a little charm that says, do not resuscitate. You may be wearing a necklace, do not resuscitate. You may have tattooed across your chest or your forehead, do not resuscitate. But if you don't have this POLST form on your refrigerator that says do not resuscitate, you know what they're going to do? They're going to resuscitate you. Now, a POLST form does not take the place of an advanced directive. A POLST form is for an emergency situation when the EMTs are called. They will adhere to what's on the POLST form. If you are transported to the hospital, the POLST form goes with you, probably right on your chest. And the emergency department will look and see what you've chosen for the POLST form, and I'll get into the options on the POLST form in just a second. Hold on just a second. And then if you're admitted to the hospital, the POLST form is no longer effective. What kicks in then when you're actually in the hospital is your advanced directive. Okay, POLST form is for emergency. Now, if you are then transported back home, ideally the POLST form goes with you. If it doesn't, that means you need to get another POLST form. So, do yourself a favor. When you see your doctor and you fill out your POLST form, do 2 of them. Make them identical. Have your doctor sign and date both of them. You sign and date both of them. Keep one in the file. So during an emergency room, hospital transfer, back home, whatever, if it gets misplaced, you will have another POLST. Or another POLST. Yes, there's a question back
I
here.
asked a couple of EMTs, I have a necklace that says do not resuscitate, POLST form on file and in wallet. They said that's what you need.
Okay, he said, he asked some EMTs about the POLST form, and he has a card in his wallet, or he has you have a necklace that says POLST form on file and in wallet. So the EMTs, if they go to his house, hopefully you have one on your refrigerator too. Okay, they would know where to get it.
Must be a hell of a wallet.
Yes,
Did you say that the post form can be signed by you and your doctor as well as you and your healthcare agent?
yes.
Either
If
or,
if you give your healthcare agent the authority, and that authority is in this advanced directive, yes, they can sign it. Now, notice.
in lieu of a doctor.
In lieu of you, not in lieu of the
Oh,
doctor.
we always have to
The
have a doctor.
physician has to sign it, and you, or your legal surrogate, has to sign it, which would be your healthcare agent. Now, pull out your post. Okay, here in the front, the gentleman.
It says photocopies and faxes are legal and valid. And be green?
Well, it's green because it's eye-catching.
Right.
Now, you could, if you make a copy of it on white paper and put it on the refrigerator, it is legal and valid, but the EMTs are more apt to see this green form because that's what they're looking for. Now, in different states, they may have a PULSE program, which results in a form that looks different from this and may be a different color. So, if you are a snowbird and you spend part of your year in California or wherever, you need to check and see what their requirements are and do they have a PULSE program. Only about half the states in the United States now have a PULSE program. Some of them are in the process of getting that program underway, and there are 6 states, I believe, that have nothing. They're not even trying to do it. So this is state dependent, yes.
I copied it, I made a miniature one for my wallet, I made another big one, and I made them all green.
Okay, she copied hers, made sure they were all green. You can get green paper at the office supply store, and made a miniature one for her wallet. Very good thinking. Okay, now let's take a look at it, and let's look at the sections here. Go down those quickly. See, he's got his back there, out of his wallet. Great example, thank you. And it's green, it's green. Okay. Now, Section A, hold on just a minute. Section A is where you choose CPR or no CPR. Now, when the EMTs come into your house, one of the first things they're going to check is, are you breathing and do you have a heartbeat? Section A applies to when you do not have a heartbeat and when you are not breathing. If that's the condition, they'll look on the refrigerator to see if there's a PULSE form, and then they will do what you have chosen to do here. Now, if you are very elderly and frail and you've decided, I'm ready to go when death comes, then you might want to say, do not resuscitate me. If you are in hospice, that means you have a terminal condition, then you might want to choose, do not resuscitate me. How much easier it would be for you to collapse, become unconscious, no heartbeat, no breath, and just let yourself, have yourself pass away there, rather than going through the rest of your illness. To illustrate why this might, a story that helps you understand this process. There was a 92-year-old man who had a lot of chronic problems, including an aortic aneurysm. And he went to see his cardiologist for a checkup, his 6-month checkup. And the cardiologist said after the exam and had him come into the office, he said, well, you know, this aortic aneurysm that you've got, it's grown. We knew it might, as you get older, the walls of your aorta can get weaker, and it's grown. And it's to the point now that if it ruptures, that's pretty much it. There's not much they can do, unless you're right on the operating table at the time, to help somebody with an aortic aneurysm. So the cardiologist said to this man, I'd like to send you to a surgeon. I'd like you to talk to him about maybe getting this fixed. So the 92-year-old man goes off to see the surgeon, gets an exam, the guy looks at all his paperwork, sits him down in the office and says, yeah, you have an aortic aneurysm and it's reached the point where we need to treat it, otherwise it could rupture at any moment. And the gentleman says, well, doctor, I'm 92, I have a lot of chronic diseases, and I understand older people, when they have major surgery, it's really hard on them, and some of them really don't do very well. What are my chances of surviving this surgery? And the surgeon says, well, I'm going to be honest with you, it's about 65%. 65% of the chance that you will survive the surgery. So this 92-year-old man says, thank you, doctor, and he goes back to see his cardiologist to report. And the cardiologist says, well, I got the report from the doctor, and he's really, the surgeon, and he's really recommending that you have this surgery. And And the gentleman says, well, you know what? He said that if it ruptures, and you've told me too, that I'm pretty much a goner. So I don't think I'll have the surgery. Why don't we do a pulse form, do not resuscitate? And the cardiologist says, well, why? And he says, well, because when I'm dead, I want to stay dead. Okay, question back here. You still have a question? Yes.
What type of physician qualifies for this form? I do not have any MD or Western medicine physicians.
That's a good question. If you don't have an MD or, you know, I will have to find out about that. Can you see me later?
That's what they always say.
What's the question?
The question was, what if I don't have an MD? I'm using, or not a Western medicine doctor. How do I get that signed? And I'll have to ask Catherine or Beth back there, and I will get an answer to you. See me afterwards, okay?
Thank
Good
you.
question.
Thank you.
And you had a question.
You mentioned earlier that the pulse is good only when the EMG is taken. And once you reach the hospital, then you have to have the advanced directive. So that means you should have the advanced directive together with this.
Yes, because the advanced directive has a heck of a lot more stuff in it, more detail. As soon as you're out of the emergency room and admitted to the hospital, this no longer is in effect. Your advanced directive will then be effective. I mean, there are some general guidelines here, but generally they want you to have an advanced directive which has more detail.
Can you attach it to this, or?
Well, I guess you could, but probably not. Your help. I'll talk about that in just a moment, okay? Okay. Now let's look at section B. This section kicks in if you are breathing and or have a heartbeat, one or the other. You're still considered alive. And there's three options here, A, B, and C, and they have different degrees of treatment. And so you have to think about that. And it depends on where you are in your life. Are you terminally ill? Do you still have a fair amount of life going? What is it that's still going on with your life? And so the first one, if I fall and knock my head and get a little cut on my forehead, don't take me to the hospital, just give me comfort measures, bandage my head. I don't want to go to the hospital. The second one is limited additional intervention, and the third one is full treatment. Get me to the hospital, do whatever you need. Now, these are things that you need to discuss with your physician when you complete this form. Talk to them about these options and what they mean. And then you think about it and you make that choice. Section 3, or C, is your signature section, and it has to have your physician or physician's assistant signature, and it's got to be dated, and then you have to sign and date it, or if you are incapacitated, your legal representative, which would be your durable power of attorney for healthcare, and they can sign it. So we've got 2 questions about other signings, and we will get back to those people who've raised those questions. Now, let's talk about CPR. CPR is not like what you see in the movies. It's not like what you see on television. CPR can be a very long and vigorous procedure, if you've ever seen it done in reality. And you know, only statistics show that only about 18% of elderly people who receive CPR and have epinephrine for their heart recover and get a stable heartbeat. 18%. That's not very much. And only 5% of those recover and still live for about a month. And only 2% of those are able to go home from the hospital with acceptable cerebral function. So CPR, especially in elderly people, is not a ticket to good health. And you need to think about that. I had a sister-in-law who watched her mother receive CPR after she collapsed at the dinner table. Her husband, her mother's husband, was on hospice, had a pulse form on the refrigerator. They called the EMTs. The EMT said, oh, that's not you, and proceeded to do CPR because she didn't have a heartbeat and she wasn't breathing. And she said it was the most traumatic thing she had ever seen done with her dear mother. And that's the last thing she really remembers about her mother, because they did take her to the hospital and she died within 2 hours. So think about CPR. Now, It's important that you have a pulse form when you need it, but you don't have to have one when you don't need it. If you're running marathons and playing tennis 5 days a week, you probably don't need a pulse form right now, okay? But when you need it, terminally ill, chronically ill, very elderly and frail, and you know you could go at any moment, and you're ready to accept death, then a pulse form kicks in. Now, what do EMTs do if they come to you because you've collapsed and they find out that on your pulse form it says do not resuscitate, and you indeed have no heartbeat and you're not breathing? Well, they don't pack up and go. They will put electrodes on your chest, and they will monitor your chest for a period of time to make sure what's going on, to see if your heart would spontaneously start to beat again. When they feel that you really you're really gone, then the paramedic with them, or if the paramedic is not with EMTs, they'll call one from their station, and the paramedic can pronounce death. And then they will either call the sheriff's department, the coroner, whatever is the next step in your particular community. It's different in different communities. In my community, we call the funeral home. Now, if you're in hospice, they will have you do a pulse form when you enter hospice. Generally, you select do not resuscitate if you're in hospice with pulse form, because if you should collapse, not breathing, no heartbeat, you're gone. Just let it go, because you're going to die anyway. So expect a pulse form if you're in hospice. Now, do I need an advance directive? Every person over the age of 18 needs an advance directive. Karen said that young people think they're never going to die, and so they don't do advance directives. A study was done, and it found that 60% of the people over the age of 18 wanted their end-of-life wishes respected, and 30% had done anything about it. Now, you're not part of that 30% because you're here today because you want to do an advance directive. But if you are going to want your wishes respected and you don't have advance directive, that's crazy. Okay, now, Karen mentioned Terry Schiavo. We all remember that case when it was in the news. Lived for 15 years on life support because the husband and the parents fought over what they wanted to do. If she had had an advance directive, wouldn't it have been easier? She's not the only one. You may recognize the name Nancy Cuisin. 7 years in a persistent vegetative state before she was allowed to be disconnected and died. Karen Ann Quinlan, 9 years. How many of you would like to be in a persistent vegetative state for years and years and years? So your advance directive can help you avoid that. Advance directives communicate your end-of-life wishes to family members and medical providers. And it will help ensure that those wishes are going to be honored. Remember, the default in medical care today is everything they can throw at you, they're going to do. And if you don't want everything, you're ready to go, you don't want everything, your advance directive is where you can identify that. Would you want to be faced with some kind of existence in a hospital bed rather than a life where you can communicate with your family and enjoy life? No, I don't think so. Now, I'd like you to consider your advance directive to be your last love letter to your family. By doing an advance directive, you take the burden off of your children, your other family members, of making those hard decisions when you're facing the end of your life. And that's showing love to them. You don't want them feeling later on after you pass away, golly, did I make the right decision for Mom? So use your advance directive as the last love letter to your family. Now, there are a few limitations. I want to call those out to your attention right now. An advance directive is not honored during emergency treatment, either at home when the EMTs are called or when you're in the emergency room. The pulse is designed for emergency treatment. Now, and the advance directive will take effect when the crisis is passed. Now, keep in mind that the advance directive is suspended when you have surgery, have you ever noticed when you sign a surgical consent form, it says your advance directive will not be honored during the surgical process? And when I saw that last time I had some minor surgery, I said, what? Isn't that why I have this? In case there was something that went wrong? And if you think about it, if you're in surgery, the doctor is going to do everything he can to make sure you survive that surgery, get into the recovery room, and either go home or go into your hospital bed. Once you're out of surgery, your advance directive can then be in effect. If you have a real problem with that, before you have surgery, talk to your physician and tell him about your concerns and see if he can alleviate those concerns, or at least explain why that is being suspended. Yes, there's a question.
I don't know if it's changed or not. I retired from 7. Because it was considered if you came to surgery, you wanted to fix. Because of cancer patients or people that were dying, but were in pain, and they were coming to get a line-in for medication or something, if they talked to the doctor and the anesthesiologist, so effectively, then they could bypass the advanced directive. But it had to be both of them.
So she's saying that if an advanced cancer patient is coming into surgery, maybe to have a port or a line put in.
Now, anyone that has pain, they'll want something just to get rid of the pain. Right?
Just to get rid of the pain. In that case, if something happens during surgery, the physicians can honor your advance directive. Okay, that's good to know. They both need to know that they're going to, and they both have to agree and sign it. Okay, that's a very good comment. Thank you very much. Now, there's another document in your packet on the right-hand side. I don't expect you to pull it out, but just understand that it's there. And it is a document about choosing, excuse me, I'm behind myself here, choosing a healthcare agent. I'm going to go through that, but that's a good refresher if you have some questions about it and want to refer back to it. First of all, a healthcare agent is the legally designated person named in your advance directive. Acts for you when you lose capacity. Loses authority when you regain capacity to make decisions and choices. A durable power of attorney for healthcare or a healthcare agent named in this advance directive has no authority over anything else, including financial. You usually will have a financial durable power of attorney. This durable power of attorney we're talking about today is only dealing with health-related items. Now, we strongly recommend that you choose not one, but 2 healthcare agents. One will be your primary healthcare agent, and the other one will be your alternate if your primary cannot act for you. Maybe they're traveling out of the state or maybe even in a foreign country and you have a crisis, somebody needs to speak for you, then your alternate healthcare agent can step in. When the primary healthcare agent comes back, then they assume the responsibility of making decisions. If you don't name a healthcare agent, and you don't have to, but we strongly recommend you do, the state will do it for you. And you know, sometimes the state doesn't do a very good job of doing things like you might want them. Okay, they have a hierarchy. In law, they have a hierarchy. First of all, it will be a guardian. If you have a court-appointed guardian, that's who they will ask to be your healthcare agent. Not everybody will have one, but if you're alone, nobody help take care of your finances and things like that, the state can afford a guardian for you. If you don't have a guardian, then they'll look to your spouse. If you don't have a spouse, they will look to your children, your adult children. If there are no adult children, then they're going to look for your parents. Do you have a parent living that can step in and make decisions for you? If you don't have any parents, the next person they would look to would be an adult sibling. Now, let's think about what that might mean. What if the only child you have is a son that you have not seen for 30 years, and you are estranged, he's living an alternative lifestyle, you've never seen eye to eye? Would you want him to be making end-of-life decisions for you? Maybe it's not your son. Maybe it's the only person in this hierarchy is your brother living off the grid in Washington, or in Montana, not Washington, Montana. member of this really weird sect. And again, you've never seen eye to eye with him and you haven't spoken with him for an age and a year. Would you want him making your end-of-life medical decisions? So, what does this mean? Choose your own healthcare agent. In fact, choose primary and choose secondary or alternate. Yes, question?
Do they have to be residents of the state of
I'll
Washington?
go right through that.
Okay.
Hang on, hang in with me. Now, who can be my healthcare agent? And these are things you need to think about as you choose a healthcare agent. Choosing a healthcare agent is not an easy task, and it's not anything you should take lightly. It's a very serious decision. So first of all, they have to be 18 years of age or older. They have to be an adult and mentally competent. That makes sense. They may be a family member or a close friend whom you trust to make serious decisions. It does not have to be your spouse or partner or a member of your biological family. Your healthcare agent does not need to live in the state of Washington, but just think about the logistics of that. If you collapse, you're unconscious, decisions need to be made, and your healthcare agent is New York, the only way the communication is going to be done is over the phone with the healthcare provider. Sometimes being by the bedside is the best. So we really recommend that if all of your family lives out of state and you want your oldest son and he's agreed to be your healthcare agent, you might have somebody else named who's close by, a friend or a neighbor who would be willing to do that, and then get in touch with your oldest son. So think about that. Here's something for people who are in a same-sex relationship or a registered domestic relationship. If you do not name your partner as one of your healthcare agents, the right to make medical decisions for you could be challenged, especially if you're out of the state of Washington. In the state of Washington, you're pretty good. Out of the state of Washington, that may be an issue. So same-sex marriage or domestic relationships, you need to think about maybe naming your partner as your healthcare agent. Now, there's some people who shouldn't be named as your healthcare agent. Whoops, let me go back. Oh, I already went down that. Sorry. Your healthcare agent cannot be a doctor or an employee of your doctor. Healthcare agent cannot be the owner, operator, administrator of the healthcare facility that you're in at the time you sign your advance directive, except if one of those people is a relative. That kind of makes sense. If you have a hard time finding a healthcare agent, you can always call Compassion and Choices of Washington, and they can give you some assistance in helping you identify people who might possibly be willing to serve as a healthcare agent for you. Now, whom do I choose? This is key. You need to give some thought to who your healthcare agent is going to be. First of all, it needs to be someone who's willing to accept the responsibility. Now, a recent study found that 30% of the people who had been named healthcare agents on someone's advance directive didn't know it. Surprise! I'm in the hospital, somebody needs to make decisions for me, you're it. Oh my gosh, we've never even had a discussion. So it's really important that you choose someone who will be willing to be your advocate, and someone who will be a strong advocate. You need someone who can stand up to medical providers if need be. If a doctor is unwilling to honor your advance directives, you need someone who can say, well, I'm going to sue you for medical battery if you don't do what this advance directive does. Someone needs to be able to stand up for you. And ideally, this goes back to that thing we just discussed, someone who lives relatively close to you, can get to your bedside as quickly as necessary. So if you think of all of those things, it's pretty apparent that choosing a healthcare agent requires some thought, and it's a very important decision. So, let's get started creating our advance directive. Now, the advance directive is all about choices. It's something, sorry. I'm getting fast fingers here, sorry. Before I go into that, I want to call your attention to the values worksheet that's in your packet. Now, this is a very interesting document that you should go through because it gets your juices flowing and your thought process going as you consider the choices you want in your advanced directive. Now, on the front of it, there are a number of statements that you should go through this paperwork and make those choices. For instance, a statement that said, letting nature take its course. How important is that to me? Is it a 4, very important, or a 0? I don't care. Or being independent. How important is being independent to me at the end of my life? Is that very, very important? Give it a 4. Or a 0, not very important. So by going down these statements, it starts your thought process going. Now on the back side are a number of questions and statements which again start you thinking about these choices that you'll be making. So this is a very important document that will help you work through thinking about what you want. Some people even attach it to their advanced directive, just because it elaborates a little bit on their thought process and helps their family and friends understand, why did I make this decision? Okay, you have also in your packet a set of instructions for the advanced directive. Don't bother taking that out. It's there for reference. I'm going to be going through all of that as we work through the advanced directive. But it is there. And if you don't make all your decisions here and finish your advanced directive today, you can take that back with you and help you refer to the things we're talking about. Now, here's some general instructions for filling out your advanced directive. So each one of you take out one copy of the advanced directive out of your packet, and there should be 2. And again, it says durable power of attorney for healthcare and healthcare directive, all such and such. Now, you will, yes? I can't hear you, I'm sorry, can you speak up? I will cover that, just a moment, okay? We'll get to that. Now, as you notice, there's a lot of blanks that need to be selected. And I've also mentioned that you can tailor your advanced directive and make it say what you want. So it's important that you don't have any blanks left unfilled in today. If you are ready to have your advanced directive finalized today, and we actually have a notary here and people who will be your witnesses if you get that far today, you've got to make sure all of these blanks are filled in. When you select something, you need to put your initial in the blank to the left of the item you're selecting. Don't do a check mark, don't do an X. You need to put your initial in that item. If there's something there that you don't want to select or you don't agree with, and there may be a phrase or something in one of the paragraphs that you don't want, then go ahead and draw a line through it. All right? So you can tailor it. Again, don't leave any of the blanks without something in it. Cross out any statements you don't agree with. You're having a problem. Can you find your form? Okay, Karen, could you help her find the right form there? She's probably looking at one blank. Right on the front of it, the first blanks are your healthcare agent that you will be filling in. Okay, we've given you 2 copies. Now, if you want to use one copy as a working copy today, making notes on it, jotting things down, and then use the second copy as your final copy, that's perfectly fine when you're ready to have all your decisions made and you want to do it in ink. Or, if you complete one copy today and it's ready to be signed and notarized, which we can do, then you can take the other copy home and share it with somebody. Somebody in your family, maybe your neighbor. So we do have 2 copies. And if you need more copies, copies are available on the Compassion and Choices of Washington's website, and I will have that sign up at the end of our seminar so you can write down that web address. And on the right-hand side of that website, they have a link to your advanced directive. and you can click on that and print it. Also, out on the front table, I just got the high sign that they have extra copies out there. So don't be stingy, share. This is a good thing to share. Now, the first thing you need to do is fill in your full legal name at the top. So this is your advance directive. And now let's start going through section by section. Now, section 1, when I want this document to apply. And the first sentence kind of says it all. It says, I want this document to apply even if I become unable to make my own health care decisions. Unlike other healthcare directives, this one happens to have some options in section 10 which actually take effect after you die. We'll go through that. That's unique to the Compassion and Choices of Washington's Health or Advanced Directive, and we'll go through that in just a moment. So read through section 1, and if there's anything in that paragraph that you don't agree to, that you don't like, you could cross it out, but there's no place here for you to select this or not. This is just a statement as to why you're making an advanced directive. It's pretty general, and I think it's a pretty good description. Section 2, very important section. This is the section where we select our healthcare agents and name them on the document. And notice I've said primary and alternate. It's important to have both of them. Now, I also said that you don't have to name a healthcare agent if you don't want. Remember, the state will take care of you, if that's what you want. And if you don't want to name a healthcare agent, then I'd like you to cross out section 2 and section 3 because they both pertain to selecting a healthcare agent. Now, before you put somebody's name down here as primary and alternate healthcare agent, have you talked with them? Do you know that they know what you want? Do you know that they will be an advocate for you? Do you know they will stand up for you and do what you want and not what they think is best? So if you haven't got permission from them to be your healthcare agent, you're not ready to complete your advanced directive today. Now, what you will need here, if you have your healthcare agents already identified, is you will need their name, full name, address, and telephone number. This is the only place on your advanced directive that you can change later on without having to do an entirely new advanced directive. And the only thing you can change here in relationship to your healthcare agent is their address and phone number. If they move, if they get a new phone, you can cross out the old one and put in the new one. But you can't change their name. If you have to rename someone as your healthcare agent, then you need to do a new advanced directive. Is that clear? Okay, if you're not going to do an advanced directive or a healthcare agent, then you need to cross out sections 2 and 3. Hopefully, you will name a healthcare agent. Section 3. Now, section 3 is the authority you're giving your healthcare agent. And read through that paragraph, and if there's anything there, there's 6 items, and let me go through them. You're giving your healthcare agent the authority to consent, refuse consent, or withdraw consent for medical treatments when you cannot make that decision yourself. That's a pretty powerful authority. If you agree with that, you don't have to do anything. Second item, B, is you give your healthcare agent the power to request a special treatment or a certain treatment they may have heard about and the doctor hasn't told them. Now, that doesn't necessarily agree that the doctors are going to do that, but your healthcare agent can make that request. C is you want your healthcare agent to have access to your medical records. If you've got a problem with that, cross that particular one out. If not, just leave it as it is. Employing or dismissing healthcare workers. Maybe it's your home health care people or whatever. You're giving your healthcare agent the power to dismiss those people. You're giving your healthcare agent the power to make a POLST form. If you don't already have it and the time has come for you to have a POLST form, your healthcare agent can sign it. It doesn't have to be you. And you're giving your healthcare agent the authority to move you from one medical facility to another if, for some reason, you're not getting the treatment that you want, or they think something will, some other facility will be better for you. That's a lot of authority. If there's anything in those 6 items that you don't want your healthcare agent to do, just draw a line through it. Any questions there? Yes? Yes?
I'm not quite sure about the question in particular medical treatments. If you don't want to use medical, does that mean, are you saying that they have permission to try something to keep you alive?
They have, well, hopefully that conversation, okay, she's asking a question about if you're saying the healthcare agent has the power to request a specific medical treatment. Yes, they could request anything they felt might help you, but this is the conversation you need to have with them. And if you are toward the end of your life and say, I don't want any more help, don't do anything for me, then don't request that. But just because they might request it doesn't mean they'll get it for you. Maybe they heard something on the news. You know, there's a lot of news now about Alzheimer's. They're doing a lot of research. Maybe there's something on the news that if you don't want any special treatment done, you might just want to cross that one out, okay? Okay, next one, section 4. This section is important, how I want my healthcare agent to make decisions for me. Now, there is no way you or your healthcare agent can think of anything that might come up in your medical treatment as you approach the end of your life. You can't think of everything. So if something comes up and the doctors are proposing something, or a crisis happens and something happens to you, and the healthcare agent has to make a decision which is not delineated in the choices that we're making in our healthcare, or our advanced directive, this statement says, this is what I want you to do, to consider if you make a decision for me that's not outlined specifically in my advanced directive. First of all, I want you to consider my values. So again, that means you've got to have a conversation with your healthcare agent, right? And you want them to consider the contents of this document. So we're making a lot of choices in this document. And you also want them to consider medical information they receive from the doctors attending you. And then that healthcare agent, if it's not actually written down in your advanced directive, will make a decision of what they think you might want when you can't make that decision yourself. Question over here.
What if you only want them to make medical decisions covered within your medical insurance plan so you don't have a burden on your family?
That's a good question. What if you want them to, they might have to make a decision about treatments that are not covered by your insurance plan, which may be a burden on your family. You know what? You could add that sentence there, and you could qualify that. So remember, I told you, you can make changes to this to tailor it to what you are concerned about. So you could just add that statement. Now, section 5. Why I'm making this statement, or this advanced directive. And if you read through that paragraph, it's pretty self-explanatory. And let me just start reading some of it. This is a very serious paragraph. It says, I value life, but I believe that to be kept alive in certain circumstances is worse than death. I do not want others to substitute their choices for mine because they disagree with my choices. I do not want my intentions rejected. I completed this document so that my choices are going to be adhered to. Now, qualities of life that are worse than death. Oh my gosh. Got to put some thought into that. One of my thoughts is, I wouldn't want to be like Terry Schiavo. Would you? I wouldn't want to be lying in a hospital bed connected to a lot of tubes. No way to communicate with my family and friends. I'm existing. So, This is where you tell people that I think there are some conditions worse than death, and we'll go through those in just a moment in section 6. Now, also at the bottom of this section is a blank, and it says, I have completed the attached additional statement of my values. Now, this is optional for you. If you would like to do that values statement and then attach it to your advanced directive, that's probably a good idea, and you can just put your initial there and say, I'm going to attach it. There's other things that you might want to attach to your advanced directive after you complete it. You might want to attach a letter to your family that tells them how much you love them, how much of a joy they've been to you, what your philosophy of life is, and what you're proud of having done in your life, just as kind of another last love letter to your family. And then here's a place also, if you anticipate one of your family members to really be the wrench in the works when end-of-life decisions are being made, you could put a statement there, I love my son Edward very much, but we have never seen eye to eye, and I know he doesn't agree with anything that I stated here, but please respectfully ignore his statements and do what I want. So this is a way you can kind of cover your bases there if that should loom in your family discussions. Now, the statement I want to make here is, remember that your health care agent is the top decision maker in the hierarchy, even if family members still object. Your named health care agent is the one who can make those decisions. Those who are not named can make objections. There can be a discussion, but what your health care agent decides will be done. That's the reason you're naming a health care agent. Okay, over the page, section 6. Now, section 6 and section 7 are kind of the meat and potatoes of this document. This is where we get down to the nitty-gritty. Now, remember in section 5, we talked about those conditions that to me are worse than death. I don't want to go through that. Let me go if I reach that condition. So let's take a look at these conditions that are worse than death. Now, section 6, I think you probably observed, it's divided into 2 sections. The first section is identifying those conditions that you think are worse than death, and then the second section is talking about some temporary life-sustaining treatments, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But let's just concentrate on section 6A right now. So, if you think any of these conditions itemized here in section 6A are what you consider to be worse than death, then you should put your initial to the left of the number. If you think, oh, that's okay, I'll do that, then just put cross it out. That means you don't think that's worse than death. You're willing to do that. Okay, so number 1. This is the Terri-Schiavo provision. Unconsciousness or coma from which the ability to think or communicate will probably not be recovered, or unconsciousness lasting a period of time, or when my doctor says it's time to go. So both of those, that item has 2 blanks, and both of them must be filled in. If you select one by putting your initial to the left side of number 1, saying, I consider that to be a condition worse than death, then you need to go to the end of this statement, and we need to talk about what you're going to put in there. You may want to be allowed to remain in that condition for a week to give the time for your family members to come from the United States to say their last goodbye. You may be a younger person with a lot of life ahead of you. Yes, you're unconscious. Yes, there's not much hope. But let's leave me there for 2 to 4 weeks. Whatever you're comfortable with before you make the decision to disconnect from all the machines. If you are not comfortable with putting a time frame on that item, you can put down doctor's judgment. When you are in an unconscious or persistent vegetative state, doctors will be pretty clear to you as to whether there's any hope. So you can let the doctor make that decision, and then you can go by when he says, I think it's time. Yes?
Well, which doctor? I mean, is this the attending?
The attending physician, yes. When the attending physician, who's ever treating you at that time, says, we've done all we can, there's not much hope, it's time to let him go. Okay? Now, numbers 2, 3, and 5. Excuse me. No, not there. Numbers 2, 3, and 5. Yes, another question?
Yeah. Number 1, it's a little hard to, you say 1 or 2 weeks, or?
Yeah.
You can just put down doctor's judgment.
Well, I don't know which doctor.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, it will be your attending physician who is ever attending you in the hospital.
Well, we don't know his judgment at this point.
Well, you're right. There's some unknowns there. If you're older, probably putting down a period of 2 to 4 weeks.
Or days.
Or you could even put days. You know, it does require some thought. And you might even want to talk to your physician about what you put there. So that means you can't complete it today. You might want to take that into your physician and say, I really don't want to be left on life-sustaining equipment or for a long period of time. What do you think I should put down? What's reasonable in your medical judgment for me to put down there? It's whatever you're willing to live with. It's a hard decision. That's why this takes some thought. Now, as I said, items 2, 3, and 5 are what we consider the Alzheimer's or dementia provisions. Let's look at item 2. Apparently complete or nearly complete loss of the ability to think or communicate, which is probably permanent. Now, that pretty much describes Alzheimer's, doesn't it? Okay, if you consider that to be a quality of life worse than death, then you can put your initial there. And you want to be able to be allowed to die if something should come up, like a urinary tract infection or pneumonia. Let's not treat it, let me just go. These are all very personal decisions. Item 3, again, is one of the Alzheimer's, but not necessarily confined to Alzheimer's or dementia. Number 3 talks about total dependence on others for my care of physical deterioration, which is probably permanent. I think one of the worst things I personally can think about is lying in a hospital bed. Somebody has to feed me, somebody has to bathe me, somebody has to change my diaper, I can't get up, I've got so much medication to control my pain that I'm not conscious all the time, or I can't have a coherent conversation with my loved ones. Boy, that doesn't sound very good to me. Now, that's your choice. If you value life, you want every minute of this life, then you probably don't want to select that one. But if you feel like you consider that particular condition to be worse than death, then you might want to put your initials there and say, I just don't want to do that. Let's skip down to number 5, because this is our last Alzheimer's provision, and it literally says irreversible dementia such as Alzheimer's. Now again, if you have that, you know there is no recovery. You are going to die a long and lingering death, and it may not be nice. So if you consider that to be a condition worse than death, then you can go ahead and put your initial there. If you're willing to live it out until you die from something else, then you put a line through it. Let's go back up to item 4. Item 4 deals with pain, which is probably cannot be eliminated or can be eliminated only by sedating me so heavily that I cannot converse. And there are some conditions that are very, very painful. To name one, bone cancer can be very, very painful. Most cancers are very, very painful. So if you have a terrific amount of pain and you don't want to be preserved just to endure that pain, you might want to check that and say, that's a condition I consider worse than death. I can't communicate, my life is really gone, I'm so medicated, I don't want to be there. Number 6, this is optional, other things that you may think are worse than death, and this is very personal. If you've got somebody you've watched go through advanced Parkinson's, or somebody you watch go through MS, or some other neurological thing, anything else that you've seen somebody have a very lingering and long and painful death, you might want to note that there. And you could even talk with your doctor and says, you know, what do I look like? Are they going to get something like that? Maybe I better should put that down. So you can fill something in there if you'd like. Yes, another question over here. No, well, yeah, you really kind of need to identify what you're fearing. If you've been already diagnosed with MS or Parkinson's, that may be what you want to put there. Because in itself, they don't really, it's not a death sentence. But you know it's going to get pretty bad before you pass away. Okay, now, let's go down to the second section of 6, and this is 6A, and this is what I don't want when I don't want life-sustaining treatment. Now, if you've identified the things that you think are worse than death, but the doctor comes to you and your family or your healthcare agent and says, you know, there's this new treatment, I'd like to give it a try. It may bring him back to a quality of life that would be acceptable to him. Would you like to try it? Now, the first item on section 6A is where you can say, yeah, if the doctor thinks there's a good chance I can regain a quality of life that I could enjoy, then yeah, go ahead and try it. But try it for 1 or 2 weeks or whatever the doctor says. And the doctor is going to say, you know, we're going to give this a try for a couple of weeks. If it doesn't, then all bets are off. So maybe the doctor's judgment is a good thing to select here. Okay? So if you're willing, if the doctor thinks that this particular treatment can help you regain a quality of life that's acceptable to you, then you can go ahead and check number 1. Now, number 2 is no, don't do anything. I don't care what the doctor says, just let me go, no treatment. Now, how might that work? I have an acquaintance whose husband has had Alzheimer's, and it went rapidly, and to the point where she could no longer care for him at home. And so she moved him into a memory care facility, and she was visiting on a regular basis, and he was getting worse and worse. That is a very sad disease. You who've had it in your family know what it's like. She received a phone call from the memory care facility one morning and said, your husband has a urinary tract infection. Now, a urinary tract infection left untreated, especially in an elderly person, can cause death. Just so pneumonia left untreated can cause death. So if somebody who has Alzheimer's develops pneumonia, what are you going to say? She told the nurse, don't treat his urinary tract infection, just keep him comfortable. And people in those care facilities or in hospice, they know how to keep them comfortable, so they're not agitated, they're not in pain, and with a matter of days, he died. So that's something you need to think about. If you are really very elderly, very frail, lots of things going on, you may say there, no, I don't even want you to try something for a short period of time, just no temporary life-sustaining treatment. Your choice. Section 7. Yes, question.
I noticed that none of this really covers depression, deep depression, or mental states in which hopelessness takes over. And I was wondering, for example, it might manifest as complete lack of interest in eating or drinking. So would that be another kind of intervention that, I mean, they're obviously going to try to help people like that, are they not? Or I don't know.
Yeah, because depression in itself is not a terminal diagnosis. Okay, the question is, if somebody's suffering from depression and hopelessness, and to the point where they're not eating or drinking, how does that fit into your advanced directive? Mitch or Catherine, would you like to comment on that? Depression itself is not a terminal illness.
But it's self-be a physical kind of self-defeating.
It can be self-defeating. Mitch, yes?
It needs to be a physical illness, determined as like terminally ill, physical illness.
Okay.
Not
Mitch's are on the board here. It says it's a physical, life-terminating illness that we're talking about, and depression I don't think qualifies there. But that can be very miserable too. I know. Okay, yes.
I'm confused about 6B. So is it saying that if it's about one of the conditions we checked on 6A, and there's a treatment the physician thinks might change one of those?
Okay, 6A is helping, she's asking about the difference between 6A and B, and it takes a little bit of thought and reading. 6A is where you decide what those conditions are that you think are worse than death. 6B allows you to say, if I have one of those conditions I've identified as worse than death, and the physician thinks there's something they can do, and this is the important part, that would restore me to a condition that would be acceptable to me, then do I want the physician to try it for a certain period of time? Okay? That's only if the physician thinks that you could then regain some quality of life that would be acceptable to you.
But if you don't want that, you mark it out.
On number 6, yes. If you don't want life-sustaining treatment, temporary life-sustaining treatment, you select number 2. You cross out number 1 and you select number 2. If you want the physician to try something, you select number 1, you cross out number 2. Now, there's nothing to say that over a period of time you can change your mind of what you want. And if you do change your mind, you can get another advanced directive and complete it and make changes. Okay? Don't make the changes on your existing advanced directive, do a completely new one. Now let's go on. Oh yes, back there.
So you're saying that if you want for B, you sign, but you don't cross out number 2, you just sign for number.
You initial the one you want, you cross out the one you don't want. Initial the one in sections B, you initial the one you want, cross out the one you don't want. It's either you're willing to accept temporary life-sustaining treatment or you're not. Yes?
Am I understanding correctly that B refers to the qualities that I've already said I don't want to live with?
Right. You are identifying the qualities that you think are worse than death in section A. Section B is referring to those qualities. Okay? If you have, let's see, a lot of pain and the doctor says, I think there's some surgery we can do to help get rid of that pain, are you willing to go for the surgery? And that's a temporary thing. Okay? So section B refers to what you've chosen in section A. Let's go to section 7. Now this is on the top of page 3. Now this is where you choose the life-sustaining treatment that you do not want. These are the things that you choose that you don't want. So any of the things that you initial here means you don't want to receive those treatments. If you want them, then cross out because you're identifying the things you don't want. Now this is a strong message to medical providers who want to try a lot of life-sustaining treatments. You know, doctors, as Karen said, don't like to give up. They want to keep you going. They want to heal you. That's what they're there for. And so if they're suggesting other treatments and you don't want them, this is where you get to say, enough is enough. Let's go through those. Nutrition and hydration. If you can't eat by mouth, do you want artificial nutrition and hydration? Do you want a nasal tube? Do you want IV? Or do you want to just be let go? So if you do not want artificial nutrition and hydration, put your initial next to that one. The next one is...
Question.
Yes.
What if you want hydration but not nutrition?
Make a little cross out nutrition. Or cross out hydration, yeah. Okay, tailor it for what you want. CPR, the next one is CPR. Do you want CPR or not? We talked about that with the pulse form. This is a big decision. If you have no heartbeat and are you not breathing, do you want them to shock your heart? Do you want them to intubate you and put oxygen down in your lungs in order to get your breathing again. If you do not want CPR when you are at the end of your life, then you need to select CPR and put your initial there to select that. Any heart regulating measures, if you're in VTAC, do you want them to give you meds and stuff to get you out of VTAC or whatever is necessary to get your heart beating regularly again? Do you want them to treat you for that? Dialysis, excuse me, I'm sorry, I jumped one. Surgeries, more surgeries to prolong your life. Do you want that? Do you want blood dialysis or filtration or transfusions with the effort to prolong your life? Or if you've reached that point and you say, I don't want any of that, put your initial by the ones that you do not want them to do to you. Any medication with the purpose of extending your life rather than pain control. I think all of us at the end of life, if we're in pain, want to have that pain controlled. But don't give me anything else. Maybe I'm through with chemo. I don't want any more chemo. Just keep me comfortable. So if you don't want that, put your initial next to that. And then there's kind of a catch-all at the bottom. And the idea here is anything else you guys can think of to keep me alive, I don't want it. I'm ready to go. Let me go. So the things that you don't want need to have your initial. The things that you say, yeah, go ahead, put your line through that one. Now, keep in mind that if you are conscious and competent, you can make a decision which is contrary to what you put in your advance directive. That is always your right, okay? And if you want to change what's in your advance directive and you're not in that medical situation yet, you can do a new advance directive and make changes, and that's might happen. Okay, let's go to number 8 and 9. Now, 8, wishes concerning comfort, care, and medication, and this is really, really important. Not every medical provider is very good at managing pain, or they have a great reluctance to give you enough pain control to keep you comfortable because they don't want to run into problems with the state or they don't want to get you addicted. But if you are in such pain that you need morphine, if there's no ethical or legal consideration, you have to give that. If you're going to be dying in a month or so, you don't have to worry about becoming addicted. You just need what you need in order to keep you comfortable. And there's a statement here down at the bottom of it. You say, I want vigorous treatment to relieve my pain and symptoms. And even if the medical provider believes that this might unintentionally hasten my death. And really, really good, heavy duty pain control, if you are really in extreme amount of pain, morphine can suppress your breathing, and it's possible that it would hasten your death. So, you got two choices here. Do you want your pain controlled, knowing that it could hasten your death, or do you want to not have that kind of control? So you need to say, yes, I agree with this paragraph, or no, I don't agree with this paragraph. Select one of them. Put your initial in one of those. Question? Yes?
Can we not fill that one in? What happens if we don't fill in a...
You are not supposed to leave any blank there. If you leave a blank unfilled in, somebody at a later date can fill it in for you without you knowing about it. And that may be when you're in a position where you can't make decisions and you're not conscious. They could fill it in and say, oh, I think that's what they wanted, and fill it in. So it's really important that you fill in all of these things. And it requires some thought. So she was wondering, what happens if you don't fill it in? You need to fill in everything, okay? Make your choices.
Question?
Yes, question?
Presumably one could cross out the entire section and then avoid the issue.
Yeah, if you don't want to make a choice here, you can cross that out. And then that would be decided. He's wondering about what if you don't want to just cross it out. That's acceptable. Then the decision about pain control would be made by your healthcare agent at the time. And if they understand what you feel about that, then they'll make that decision for you. Section 9. This is a section regarding a healthcare institution refusing to honor my wishes. Now, there was some discussion a little bit earlier today about the Catholic affiliation and purchase of hospitals here in Western Washington, and are they really going to honor my beginning of life and end of life wishes, which is, I think, what we're concerned about here. And we really haven't known of any issue where any of the Catholic affiliated institutions have refused to honor an advance directive, but it has happened in other states. So what you're asking here or saying here, that if my healthcare agent feels that what I want at the end of my life is not being honored in the institution in which I'm at, then I give my healthcare agent the authority to move me to another institution. If you agree with that, you don't have to do anything. If you don't agree with that, you don't want to give them that power, then cross out that paragraph. That's pretty straightforward. One thing we did find out, that Swedish hospital, which has got now a Catholic affiliation, because of the Catholic Church guidelines about beginning of life, will no longer perform the lab tests for Planned Parenthood, which they were doing in their laboratories, in their labs. They will no longer do that just because it's not in line with the Catholic teachings. Okay, now we're going to go to Section 10. These are wishes concerning other matters. And the first four of them require a yes or no response. Okay? So the first one is, I consent to medical treatments that are experimental. If you are unconscious and can't make that decision yourself, and the doctors offer a new treatment that they think might help, and you have said, yes, something temporary that might help, then you are saying, yeah, I agree. I will participate in an experimental program. Now, just because you say yes, doesn't mean you'll be part of an experimental program, but it does say that you give permission to be part of the experimental program if that situation should arise. The next items that I will be talking about in Section 10 all have to do with things that happen after death. And that makes this advance directive by Compassion and Choices of Washington unique. None of the other ones deal with after-death things. So the next one is tissue donation or organ donations. So do you want to donate your organs? Most of us, when we get our driver's license, make that decision. Do we want to be an organ donor? Or you can fill out a form to become an organ donor. So that's something you can think about. Do you want to? Yes or no? Will you consent to an autopsy? Now, most of us don't think that's a very nice thing. But sometimes you don't have a choice. Depending on what the regulations are in your community or the circumstances of your death, an autopsy may be required. So you can say, no, I don't, but know that it might be overruled. Or you can say, yeah, I've got Alzheimer's, I want you to take my brain, I want you to study my brain. The next one is consent to use parts or all of my body for medical research and education. University of Washington here in Seattle has a program where they will accept bodies, and they use them in the medical school for educating the new doctors and doing research. If you choose to do that, if that's something you want to do, you must make arrangements to do that before you die. So you'll need to contact the University of Washington to participate in that program. Once you die, they cremate your remains and then they send them back to the family. We have a question back there.
Your autopsy question doesn't mean that you're requesting one. It just means if somebody wants to do it, it's okay with you.
Yes, the autopsy question is not meaning you want to, you're requesting one, it's just that you're giving your permission to do one if that is optional. But it may not be optional. Okay? Yes. Question.
Within the last couple of years, I called UW Medical about
donating.
Donating. They don't take everything.
Yeah.
They may not take you. You have to
That's
fill
right.
out a whole bunch of forms, so it's not automatic.
Okay, so she's saying that she contacted the University of Washington. They don't take just every Tom, Dick, and Harry's body. So you have to fill out a form, it's qualified. But if you're interested in doing that, you can call them and find out whether you would be acceptable for that. Yes, in the
You're
purple.
not acceptable until they have you.
Oh, and then they'll give it back to you. I guess that makes sense if your body is not good enough for their program. Yes.
Okay, if you call, you ask for the Willed Body Program.
Okay, if you're calling University of Washington, call and ask for the WILLED, W-I-L-L-E-D, body program. Okay, yes, over here, bye. Yes, you.
It used to be straightforward that they would allow your body to be worked on
Donated.
by medical students.
Yeah.
And then the whole of you was cremated and remanded over to the family for burial. But now they have a lot of stipulations about what they will do with parts, pieces and parts, because it goes, it's genetic research, it's biological structures, it's a whole bunch of other things that they may retain or freeze or, send across country or something. So all of you may not wind up.
Okay, she's telling us that their program may separate parts of your body from other parts, and when you get the cremated remains back, it may not be everything. If that's going to be a problem for you, you probably don't want to do that. Let me continue on, and then we'll address some questions at the end. Okay. The last section here is naming a designated agent for funeral arrangements. And Washington law allows you to do that. Not every state does, but Washington law allows you to do that. And you've probably all heard about the Neptune Society. A lot of people are members of the Neptune Society. When you die, the call is made to the Neptune Society, and they arrange to pick up your body and dispose of it as you outlined with them. And there's also another organization. Yes. And there's also another organization. We have a representative out there that you can speak with afterwards, called the People's Memorial Association. And this is an organization for a membership of $35 one time. You join their organization, and they have made arrangements with a number of different mortuaries in this area that will provide cremation at a much lower cost than regularly. And I wish I'd had it done when I had my husband cremated. It was very expensive. Let me go on. No, let me take the questions a little bit later. So, if there's somebody you want to name as your person who's going to handle your funeral arrangements, put that information in there. If there isn't anybody, just cross that out. If you want to identify what you want done with your remains, you can add that to number F, but you may already have that information as part of your will or your trust. If you've already made that known, you can just cross that one out, and it's already in place with your will or your trust. So these are things that take place after your death, and you can choose whichever ones you want. Yes or no in the first four, cross out the ones you don't want, fill in the ones you do want down below that. Yes?
Can you put same as healthcare agents, if you have to go through everything that again?
I would think you could say same as healthcare agent in that section. That sounds logical to me. Does anybody object to that? Catherine? Can you put same as healthcare agent under the funeral designated agent and just say that, or do you have to have their name? Okay, she says put your name, address, and phone number there. Now, section 11 is if the court appoints a guardian for me, you're going to ask the court to, first of all, consider your healthcare agent, if your healthcare agent is willing to be your guardian. If your healthcare agent is not willing, or the court is not willing to appoint them as your guardian, then you would like the guardian to confer with your healthcare agent in matters dealing with health. So that's something that you can just leave as is, or you can cross it out if you don't want that. Section 11:12 is how this directive can be revoked or canceled. You can do it simply by saying, I revoke my advance directive dating such and such a date. We recommend that if you are going to revoke it, you try to get back all the copies that are out there with your healthcare agent and your family and destroy those. You could even create a letter that would state that you are revoking your health care or your advance directive. So you can do it orally, by a document, by canceling or burning or destroying all copies. Now keep in mind that if there are multiple advance directives out there and they come in conflict, the one with the latest date on it is the one that is effective. The other ones are old, but they will not be honored.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Clarification about 10E.
10E, yes.
The impression has been given that you can designate your agent merely by putting it on this form. I'm not sure that's true. I think there is a state of Washington form which you have to fill out to create your designated agent.
Then get that form and attach it to your advance directive.
But I want to
He's talking about designating a funeral or end-of-life designated agent for your funeral. He says there's a state form. Get that form, fill it out, and attach it to your advance directive, or keep it with your other legal documents. You might say see will, see trust, or whatever you have. Section 13 has to do with making this a legal document. This is where you sign it. Now, in order to make the advance directive a legal document, your signature has to be witnessed by 2 people. Okay? And they both have to witness it and date it, and they have to witness you signing your advance directive. There are some people that can't be witnesses. First of all, they cannot be related to you by blood or marriage. They cannot be entitled to any portion of your estate. So if you're going to have them witness it and they're entitled to part of your estate, they're not a good witness. Don't select somebody who has a claim against your estate. Don't use your physician, an employee of your physician, an administrator of a healthcare facility. So those are the people that you should not use to be a witness. Your neighbors, they're good witnesses. I rounded my neighbors up. If you are going to have your advance directive notarized, and we recommend you have it notarized because it just gives you more validity to that document, especially if you take it out of state or out of the country, then make sure, if you're not doing it today, because we do have a notary here today, make sure you call ahead to where that notary is, and banks usually have a notary, office supplies stores usually have a notary. Call ahead, make an appointment, take your 2 witnesses with you. Do not sign your advance directive until you get there in front of the notary. Then you sign, your witnesses sign, your notary notarizes, and also remind your witnesses and yourself to bring a valid picture ID, because she is attesting that you and your witnesses are who you say you are. So make sure if you have your advance directive notarized today, you have a picture ID with you and have it out and ready. Yes?
How often do you run this seminar?
Well, we run it whenever we get enough people who want it. And if you want to have attend it again, or you know people who would like to attend it, I suggest you call Compassion and Choices. Let them know you're interested in it, and then they will inform you when another one is scheduled. Right now, I don't know when another one is scheduled.
Roughly how often have you done it?
How often can you attend?
No, how often have you done it in the past?
How often have we done it? This is probably our 3rd or 4th. About every 6 months, Catherine says. Okay? So contact Compassion and Choices if you need information about this seminar. Now, notarization, we do have Nancy in the back. She's ready to notarize if you've got your advance directive all changed. But don't leave now if you can stick a couple of minutes later, because there's a couple of things I want to share with you that you need to know once you've got your advance directive done. First of all, I recommend that you read the last page of your instructions section. It's very interesting. It's got a lot of good information about your advance directive. Make sure your advance directive is readily available. Don't put it in your safety deposit box. You need it readily available. Let me share something with you that my sister Karen and I did when we moved in together 2 years ago. We both went through a change in life circumstances. My husband died, and we needed to redo the final documents, you know, who was our healthcare agent and our durable power of attorney for finances. And so we named each other durable power of attorney for healthcare and finances. And then we took a copy of our advance directive, which by the way happens to be this advance directive because he thought it was so great. And we took a copy of our current medication list, and we put them in a packet like this. This is just an acetate packet that you can get from any health or office supply store. And we each put our information there. And then we tucked it behind our bookcase right by the front door. If the EMTs are called and either one of us is taken off in an ambulance, the other one grabs this, gets in the car, and follows them to the hospital. And let me tell you, in the 2 years, both of us has done that. So try not to. But this is what we call our grab and go pack. And it's very good so that we have all the information that people need in a medical situation.